was one of the first responders on September 11, 2001 to the crash of United Airlines Flight 93. Although we didn't know it at the time, the Pennsylvania State Police response to Flight 93 was unlike responses given to New York City and the Pentagon. In New York City, the police and firefighters were responding to a situation that saved lives, and they also risked their lives. In contrast, all the heroes of Flight 93 died in an attempt to commandeer the plane. Upon arrival, Pennsylvania State Police to the Somerset County crash site, it was quickly determined that the role of PSP would be security and assistance to the FBI and crash site security. Upon our arrival, the crash site and wooded area were still smoldering. Shanksville Volunteer Fire Department and others had already put much of the debris in the wooded area under control. The primary debris field extended over a half a mile into the wooded area. It was approximately a 1 mile width. The primary crash site was a huge crater that appeared that the plane had hit the ground in a near vertical position. We didn't know it at the time, but the estimated speed of the plane at impact was 580 miles per hour. It was carrying approximately 7,000 gallons of jet fuel. Ponds in the area were littered with debris damage. Was apparent to outbuildings. Most of the debris was smaller objects, wiring from the plane, a lot of paper product, and sheet metal. One of the plane engines sheared the tops off the trees and was embedded in the woods. It's interesting. Walkthrough, I could see that there was a Bible fully intact, open up on pond banks. About 50 yards from the Bible, just to let you know what the nature of the debris field was like. You could see a $100 bill just laying there, untouched. My assignment was to establish the inner perimeter to protect the debris field. This consisted of bushwhacking into the area first to establish the extent of the debris dispersal. Once we knew the size of the area, over 60 inner perimeter posts were established to provide 24-hour security. Troopers were stationed in intervals of 50 to 200 yards, depending on the terrain, to permit communications from post to post. Temporary shelters were set up, which consisted of available brush, and eventually we brought in tarps to keep the rain out. A relay system was developed to provide the troopers with food and necessary equipment. At this early stage, the shelters were very crude, and concern was given to the climatic conditions. About this time of the year, I think it was a little bit cooler back then, and we had a good bit of rain in the initial stages. The troopers had responded for an extended stay with only the clothes on their backs, virtually no contact with their families. Troopers were assigned to this post within hours of the attack, and with very little understanding of what was going on in the world or the needs of their family. If you can imagine, I'm sure that many of you in the crowd that can recall that day knew exactly where you were. We were all part of that stunned nation that were quickly responding to Shanksville to provide whatever assistance we could. And this was before the period of prolific use of cell phones. A great deal of concern existed with family and friends who were out of touch. Once initial posts were set, we had to establish a plan for relief of the troopers who had been deployed. We were all part of that stunned nation that were quickly responding to Shanksville to provide whatever assistance we could. And this was before the period of prolific use of cell phones. A great deal of concern existed with family and friends who were out of touch. Once initial posts were set, we had to establish a plan for relief of the troopers who had been deployed. At approximately 10 p.m. that night of the first day, I had to address a relief crew of troopers, probably 60 or 70 men. And at this time, rumors of crash site carnage was rampant and had to be addressed. We'd gone to previous crash sites of jetliners, and it was unlike the crash of Flight 93. With the high speed of impact, there was not much carnage, and that was a good thing to tell the guys as we led them back into the wooded area, it being so dark and all over that mile line. After which, the men had to be walked to their nighttime posts in the wooded area. 2 12-hour shifts were established, and by the time we got the men to their post and back to a place of rest, it came down to about 14-hour days. In addition to the wooded area posts, we were responsible for assigning in all federal, state, and local agencies to the primary crash site. To give you an idea of what that was like, on day 2 of the sign-in, we had over 800 people signed into the primary crash site. Many of these were people that were coming in, specialists to help with the search through the debris field. On day 1, 2, and 3, the primary search area was the crater itself, and then from there we extended into the wooded area. Literally thousands of items of debris had to be tagged and then later recovered. This is pretty important to the nation at the time, although we didn't know it. The other crash sites, because of such a large area and so much miscellaneous debris, didn't provide us with the evidence that we would need to try to glue together for the nation what had occurred. At Flight 93, since it was a rural area, it made that part of it a little easier. And to give you an idea of some of the evidence that we were able to recover, the voice data recorders from the airplane were brought up, the actual box knives that we believe the terrorists used, and in one of our wooded area posts, now keep in mind this is probably a quarter mile from the crash site, we were able to find an intact wallet for one of the terrorists. Even had his photograph in it. The Pennsylvania State Police initial response lasted over 2 weeks and involved over 850 troopers. In addition to the inner perimeter security, there was also an outer perimeter that covered approximately 5 miles and over 70 posts. And those had to be switched out every day also. Hundreds of people were arriving to the area on a daily basis, which included citizens wanting to assist, various dignitaries, media, and most importantly, the family members of the victims. Buses were brought in as the family members of the crash site. This was an especially emotional day in witnessing the surviving children, parents, brothers, and sisters all gather together. As they passed by our post, all members stood at attention and saluted the families. In the early stages of the response, we had very little knowledge of how or why the crash occurred when it did. Over time, it has become apparent from cell phone records and conversation the heroic attempt by the passengers and crew members of Flight 93 to retake the plane and to stop any further harm to others. I just heard the other day of an estimate that if the plane had been in the air for 2 seconds longer, its flight path would have been directly into an elementary school. The primary memory that I take away from the crash of Flight 93 was the community response and the level of volunteerism. Other law enforcement and regulatory agencies that participated in the cooperative effort were the FBI, the ATF, the FAA, the National Transportation Safety Board, Somerset, Cambria, and Indiana County Coroners. Emergency management agencies included FEMA, PEMA, Cambria, Fayette, Somerset County EMS, Shanksville, and Central City Volunteer Fire Department. Other agencies were the American Red Cross, Salvation Army, AT&T, Motorola Corporation, Nextel Communications, Verizon Wireless, PennDOT, PA Department of Corrections. The communications was very ragged in the beginning, and it was very important that the troopers with the these communications come very that period of time we were there. Once we could connect the members with their families, it made for a better stay. The community support that we received in Shanksville was outstanding. Our wooded post would get cool at night, and community members would show up out of nowhere with piles of wood. Food and baked goods were taken to posts. Folks opened up their homes for relief breaks. Area restaurants inundated us with food. In the mornings, when you'd get up to go back to the crash site, you'd see new banners along the route in that the schools had put up. Especially one morning, I remember along the road for about a 1 mile stretch, they'd put up the little flags on both sides of the road. So for those grade school kids, secondary school kids that got out there and put out the flags, it was amazing to tell you here today just how touching it was to all the members of the state police that responded. My personal experience of Tuesday, September 11, 2001 is limited to Flight 93. It wasn't until I got home that I saw similar responses of humanity at other crash sites. As a nation, we have no petty separations, only unification for a common concern. As Americans, we join together in these times of crisis, and it reassures me of our future, no matter the challenges. Thank you.